Hello there, everybody. Well, my apologies for radio silence. It's been a very busy time at Cider Towers, work and family, and dare I say, also enjoying what is proving to be the most wonderful spring weather. That's not something that an Englishman always gets to say, and certainly this is the best spring weather that we've had since 2020, when we were all lounging around during COVID lockdown in the fine weather like we have now. It's been very sunny, fairly warm, but really dry. We had a big thunderstorm 2 days ago, and that was the first time we've had a really decent downpouring of rain in a couple of months, which is an amazing thing given that we've had the wettest 2 years in a row. It's been gross. So actually great to have some dry weather, but great to have a bit of rain as well. It's been especially good, this weather, for pollination. Gosh, the invertebrates are out and about and living their best life. They're having a great time. And you know, the blossom's been sensational. It's mostly gone now. A few cider apples still having a little bit, which is reasonably early. Where are we? Mid-May, you know. So things have really got on with it, but the conditions for pollination could not have been any better than you can ask for, really. And during this spring period, something else I've just heard, the cuckoo, which is a visitor to Britain over summer periods, and is a real sort of integral part of the not the life cycle, but the seasonality of being in the rural parts of, and urban parts as well, of the UK. Is you kind of know when it's summertime when the cuckoo is here. And in fact, you know, the earliest reference that I could find goes back to 1240. There was written down, "Summer has come in. Sing loudly, cuckoo." There you go, kind of says it all in one go. That was nearly 800 years ago, and you know what? I feel like saying the same thing. Summer has come in, sing loudly, cuckoo. And I did actually hear a cuckoo earlier on, but I first heard it a couple of weeks ago. And it's a fascinating bird. We're going to do a bit of ornithology to start with here, folks. It's a fascinating bird because it's what's called a brood parasite. So the cuckoo, it's kind of a large, it's all relative, slender bird, but a decent degree of size, 30 centimeters, a foot long, something like that. And it overwinters in Africa, slightly warmer, and then it comes over into Europe for the summer months. And the European or common cuckoo is called a Cuculus canorus. That's its Latin name. And yeah, it's what's called a brood parasite, which means that it lays its eggs in another bird's nest and then gets that bird to raise the bubs. Lazy parenting, or very, very clever parenting, possibly, depending upon your point of view. Which is amazing. So you see these great photos of tiny little dunnocks and reed warblers and meadow pipits, which are the primary birds whose nests the eggs get put into. You see these great photos of these tiny little birds feeding these giant chicks, but that's how they do it. And the cuckoo looks quite similar in coloration, grey and sort of striped across the chest, or cream coloured with grey stripes. Looks very similar to sparrowhawk, which is a predator of these small birds. So it gives them the opportunity to scare away parent and to get into the nest and lay the egg real quick. It's really, really clever. So yeah, it's a sort of part of the landscape here. So why am I talking about cuckoos other than it being a fascinating story? Well, there is always a relevance to cider, and there is an old saying in the western parts of England that you don't tap your barrel of cider, of new season cider, until you've heard the cuckoo. Now, why would that be? We're talking April, May time when you classically would hear the cuckoo. And so what we know now is that tapping and drinking that cider now versus, let's say, in February produces a cider that is a much more pleasurable experience. Well, people worked that out a long time ago, but now we know possibly why. Down to two possible causes, really. First of all, if you're in the West and you're making cider with tannic fruit, the presence of oxygen, the access of oxygen to the cider over those extra few months of maturation causes a softening of the tannin, a polymerization of these little monomers, these little tannin molecules binding together into longer chains, precipitates a feeling and expression of a softness, going from a sort of a hardness and harshness of tannin to something more softer, possibly changing more bitterness into some astringency, and just generally mellowing that structure and allowing more of the volatile phenolics, the aromas, to be unleashed as well. So a tannic cider will definitely taste a bit better in May than it would do in February, and indeed for many people leaving it for another few months still, or potentially aging for a couple of years more, as some tannic ciders can facilitate. The other thing is that during this warmer time as well, in the spring, there are certain kinds of bacteria, lactic acid bacteria, which can convert the natural malic acid, the zingy crisp acidity in apples, into a softer, smoother lactic acid, which creates a sort of more a mouthfeel perception of softness and smoothness, can give you some slightly sort of creamy tastes or butterscotchy, and just makes it a slightly smoother, more pleasurable experience. It can also precipitate sort of yogurty or rancid butter characters, or even certain kinds of bacteria that are responsible for the malolactic can also give you mousiness and cheesiness and baby vomit too. Yum, yum, yum. So it's not a given that malolactic is necessarily desired or the best thing, but for many makers, it's part of what they do and can create some real awesome characteristics. So remember, people, don't tap your new season cider till you've heard the cuckoo. And then if you do, make sure that you're in a beautiful meadow and orchard like this to enjoy your cider in. Spring is here, summer is here. Sing, cuckoo, sing! What's that?